A Nascent Kaleidoscope. Chapter 6. Ow, my fucking head. I wanted to reach up and rub it, but I found my hands bound. Careful there, friend. I looked up at the source of the voice, my eyes adjusting to the scene around me. You took a nasty tumble and hit your head. I heard the words, but they took a moment to register. Where was I? How did I even get here? Last thing I remember, I went through a portal, and it felt like I hit something, and next thing I know, here I am. Were my calculations wrong? Impossible. They weren't complete, but there's no way they were so incorrect. My instincts were telling me I was very far from home. This was so unfamiliar, yet a pricking feeling in my mind felt somewhat reminiscent of this whole thing. If it wasn't enough to notice the abundant magical energy in the air, the cat person walking parallel to the cart I was in was a dead giveaway. Fuck me. I blurted out. Exactly how I feel. The owner of the voice gave a small snort in amusement. There were a few other faces, on the opposite side next to the nice stranger. His clothes were rags, and he looked a bit on the poorer end. There was also someone bound and awake, but with his mouth gagged to my right, and on the other side of a stranger was another normal-looking man still passed out. Not to mention all the guards wearing identical armor walking alongside us. And most of these guys were huge, like holy shit, I wouldn't want to get into a bar fight with any of them. I don't suppose you could tell me where we are? I questioned. Helgen, I think. I wasn't awake for the whole ride, but it looks like we're a bit out from Helgen. That doesn't help. I sighed. So you got a name? Ralof. He gave a calm smile. Not something I expected from an apparent prisoner. You some sort of mage? The question took me by surprise. I guess magic wasn't uncommon here, though I wonder how he knew. Sure, but how did you know? Your strange clothes. Seems like something a mage without a lick of sense would wear around Skyrim. He gave a good-natured laugh. Also, seeing you fall out of a magic portal into the mud was a bit of giveaway. Oof, no wonder my head hurts. Wish I packed some basic medicine with me. Hindsight is always 20/20. Any particular reason I'm in being held as a prisoner? Unlucky, I'd wager. Imperials caught us after we had you resting in a bed. I guess they assumed you were one of ours. Damn stormcloaks. Skyrim was fine until you all came along. The man in rags spat out. If it wasn't for you lot, I would have stolen a horse and been far away from here. Quiet, horse thief. Ralof sneered. The apparent thief was too timid to reply. His eyes turned to the last little member of our cart. You're awake. He looked just as confused as I was. Where? You walked right into that Imperial ambush, trying to cross the border, eh? Ralof asked. Another unlucky friend to join with us on our journey. Do the Imperials make a habit of abducting uninvolved people? I mutter. The guy with his mouth gagged mumbled something I was uncertain of, but it didn't seem too polite towards them. Imperials, they would rather hang 100 innocent men than allow one guilty to escape. Ralof grunted. What's your name, friend? He turned towards the newcomer. Thorum. He gave a blunt reply. A fine Nord name. Ralof nodded. What about you, horse thief? Why do you care? The horse thief spat. We're all brothers and sisters in binds. Now, thief. He answered, but just shook his head when the thief looked away. Ralof turned towards me. Wilhelm, you can call me Will. I did like the way it rolled off the tongue, introducing myself with my new name for the first time. Ralof was about to say something, but the thief cut him off. You, mage. You can get us out of here. We shouldn't even be here. Use your magic or something. Yes, why don't you just keep shouting about my magic? It's not like there are guards surrounding us. I rolled my eyes, but I did hear the driver of the cart chuckle. It wasn't just me who noticed. I saw Ralof and Thorum both are the guards who had their hands on their weapons. I guess they were ready if I did anything. Helgen, this place brings back memories. I was sweet on a girl here. She used to make mead using juniper berries. Ralof looked oddly relaxed despite everything. I've never had juniper berries before. I mused. I think I was a bit of a glutton because that somehow took precedence over the fact that I was bound. What do they taste like? They're nice and fruity with a little bit of a piney aftertaste. They're best used to bake when a little underripe. It was Thorum who answered. He leaned back and looked up into the air. My mother used to make pastries with them. I would help her when I was a lad. Why are you all so calm? The Imperials are taking us to one of their dungeons. Who knows what's going to happen? The horse thief raised his voice, looking at the last member of our motley crew who hasn't spoken. And who are you supposed to be? He was just lashing out at anything right now. Well, everyone handles stressful situations differently. Watch your tongue. That's Ulfric Stormcloak, true king of Skyrim. Ralof had a surprising growl in his voice, making the thief cower again. No. Not a no-no. It can't be you. That means... Oh, divines, Mara, Debella, Kinnereth, Akatosh, save me. The man started to panic. Where are they taking us? I don't know where we're going, but Sovngarde awaits. I kinda just tuned out the rest of the ramblings. I didn't want to hear the thief start crying to his gods. I found some interesting information, though. Also, he was a decent distraction. I could see the guards just turning away or getting annoyed at the commotion. It was one of those things you cringed at, making it hard to keep watching. I activated my circuits, using a small bit of alteration on my bindings. I gave Ralof a small wink when he noticed my circuits light up under my skin. I could just see him raise an eyebrow in a small nod. Thorum looked like he held back a small smile and looked away. Well, it looks like I could count on these two at least. Ulfric wasn't really paying attention. He seemed like the kind of person who would have his head up his own ass. Whatever. By the way, what happened to my hat? Black. About ya big. Ralof used the cart bench in his hands to gesture the size. I just nodded at the description. You were clutching it tight when we dragged you back to camp. It's probably with the supplies that the Imperials confiscated a few carts ahead. I need to get closer. My circuits were still on. I pulsed mana into the cart to get me a mental image of the structure. I focused on the left wheels. In particular, they looked to be a bit weathered. It wasn't difficult to destroy them with a botched reinforcement, only a bit mana-intensive. The further my magical energy was pushed away from my body, the harder it was to shape and control. There were a few surprised shouts as the cart tipped over. Divines, damn it! The person driving the cart cursed, flopping out of his seat. The sight was somewhat amusing. His armor was probably making his tumble a bit awkward. I took a step out, catching myself from falling. Everyone stop! Another commanding voice shouted. Prisoners, don't move! There was a woman on a horse calmly trotting over. Several guards began to draw their weapons. Some more shouting and cursing. I tried to look as innocent as possible. Ralof took my K and just took a step back, holding his hands up in surrender. Some guards stepped forward, but they seemed a bit calmed by our lack of desire to initiate conflict. Oi, can we just stand to the side? This kid next to me is making me nervous with his weapon drawn. He looked even younger than me. When did these Imperials start recruiting? His hand was shaking as he held his sword. I doubt he's ever been in a fight in his life. A more senior-looking man walked over, pushing me to the back, behind the now-down cart. Get over there and stay still. I was next to Ralof now. I met his eyes and looked down. I started using my foot to etch out a rune in the dirt. I doubt he knew exactly what I was doing, but he knew a signal when he saw one. He elbowed Ulfric, who also saw and also gave a grunt in confirmation. Good man, Ralof. Now I just need to make a few more preparations. No, you'll never take me again. The horse thief shouted as he turned and made a run for it. Runner, the woman on the horse yelled, kicking her steed as she flew after him. God damn it, you moron! Fuck it! I ripped my bindings apart and slammed my hand onto the rune on the ground. The mystery actualized without issue, and the bottom of the cart flipped up, smacking away several of the guards standing in front of us. The horse pulling the thing freaked out and bolted forward, knocking past several more guards. The nearest to me just looked at the scene, dumbfounded as I punched him in the face and stole his sword. My bindings, quick! Ralof shouted. Don't need to tell me twice. I cut through his bindings with ease. Take it, I said, tossing him the stolen weapon. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Thorum headbutt another guard before stealing his weapon. As if on K, the other carts started to rebel as well, attacking guards even with their hands bound. The guard I had punched a moment ago had gotten up, with a dagger drawn from his boot. He awkwardly tried to slash me with it, and I could only look at him incredulously. Such a small blade was a stabbing weapon, dumbass. I reinforced my body, this time giving a good knock to his noggin. I saw his eyes roll back and his dagger drop to the ground. Rally with the others or scatter? I questioned. Help our comrades. The more we have scattered, the more chance we have to escape. Their base isn't that far, reinforcements would be here soon. It was Ulfric who spoke. Works for me. Thorum grunted. He waved a mace in one hand, testing its weight. Where did that even come from? I thought they were only using swords. Whatever, let's do this. I flicked my hand, igniting a few runes in the air, nothing more than a few cantrips that shot towards a couple guards. Some other prisoners nodded at me as I ran past. For Skyrim, a few of them shouted. I just ignored the cries and slipped by the more preoccupied guards. There were a couple that took a swing at me, but my magically increased reaction speed was easily able to overcome their clumsy attacks. A few hits in spots without armor, and they went down hard. A lot of these guys seemed remarkably untrained. The only immediate threat, I looked forward. There were a couple with bows, sniping away at the front. I saw a few allies fall with arrows pieced into their bellies. I twirled the dagger I had nicked from the down guard a few moments ago, and used my reinforced strength to throw it at one of the archers. And contrary to my expectations, throwing a dagger is not easy. The handle ended up slamming into his head. I could hear the ringing of metal where it hit his helmet from here. But at least it knocked him down for a moment. Close enough. The dirt under my foot exploded as I bolted towards both of them, sliding to the left to avoid an arrow passing over my shoulder. I stepped on the down one as hard as I could before diving towards the other, so he couldn't knock another arrow. He tried to draw his melee weapon, but I was quick to start laying into his head with an elbow. Reinforcement isn't something a run of a mill guard could handle. Well done, my friend. A hand clasped me on the shoulder. I saw Ralof looking proud behind me. Were these really the men who beat you? I was skeptical on how they got captured in the first place. No, we fought the real soldiers. These are the ones they just parade around town. The sons and daughters of politicians and wealthy families. I see. Let them pretend to be soldiers and bask in the glory of capturing prisoners without the risk of real combat, so their parents don't get upset. Though I saw a few battle-hardened warriors among them. Ulfric walked up as well, giving a grunt of acknowledgement. A few of his men were limping over, and a few more looked bloodied. Not many survived, but it was better than going to the gallows, or whatever was going to happen to them. We need to go, the supposed king stated. Grab what you can without being weighed down. I looked at the cart full of goods and found my hat. Was it lucky they didn't toss it away? I guess its novelty made them curious. I doubt there's another like it in this world. Where will you go, my friend? Ralof asked. No idea. I didn't exactly come here on purpose. Though, I wouldn't mind any suggestions. He seemed a bit trustworthy. If you can, head to Rift 10. The man answered after a moment. It's full of scum and thieves, but it's also a good place to hide for outsiders. The guards will take bribes without batting an eye, and you can buy almost anything you need. He flipped open a small chest full of coins on the cart. I've been there before. Thorum walked over. Look for Brynjolf. He owes me a favor. Should be part of the Thieves' Guild if he hasn't turned up in a ditch somewhere. We need to get moving, Ulfric urged. I don't doubt that some Imperial coward ran away during the fight and is getting help. Ralof nodded. It's a shame we have to leave. So much of us here. He picked up an axe and tied it to his belt before grabbing a handful of potatoes from a box on the cart and putting them in his pocket. I'll burn it before I leave. I waved him off, earning a nod of thanks. I guess this is where we part. Good luck. And you, my friend. Ralof gave me one last look before he and Ulfric took into the nearby forest. The other Stormcloaks went in other directions as they scattered into the distance. What about you, Thorum? I asked. He scratched his head for a moment in thought. I'll head to Whiterun. I hear the Jarl there is neutral, and I always wanted to join the Companions. I don't know what the Companions are, but I wish you luck. I held out my hand that he grabbed in acknowledgement. He gave one last smile before grabbing some supplies and heading out. It would indeed be a shame to leave. So much of this stuff here. There was a small chest filled with gold and jewels, a couple crates of weapons, and even a few that looked magical in nature. Not to mention the food. I was curious what it tastes like in this world. I just shrugged and started emptying a lot of it into my hat. I didn't take everything. The pocket dimension wasn't particularly large. I did withdraw a talisman and slap it on the cart. At the very least, a lot of the food would burn up. As I was about to pick a direction to run in, a thought crossed my mind. Where the fuck is Rift 10? Chapter 7. Welcome, welcome. I heard the shopkeep excitedly shout as I opened the door. Greetings. I gave a curt reply. I was getting a bit of a slimy feeling from him. He looked normal enough, nothing inhuman about his appearance. Not that I had anything against non-humans, just an observation. He gave me a once-over. I would have assumed he would be displeased by my current state of dress. My clothes were a bit torn and ruffled and perhaps even dirty. But I guess under all of that they were something he hasn't seen before. Well, might as well play off that. As you can see, I'm in need of some supplies. I gestured to my own unkempt appearance. I had arrived in town last night, having flown away yesterday to avoid any pursuers. Everything was basically closed, so I just shacked up in the nearby stables to get a few hours of sleep. I saw an inn, but there were a few guards walking around and I didn't want any potential issues. Of course! He laughed happily. The Riverwood Trader has everything you need, especially for someone who's new to the Skyrim life. That obvious, huh? I gave a good-natured smile. I wondered if he would try to scam me. It's practically a rite of passage for foreigners. I remember my first time traveling Skyrim before settling down. I was lucky enough to get an old Nord to give me some advice. Once you get the respect of the locals, everything seems to get much smoother, especially for Imperials like you and me. Well, I got the coin if you got the supplies. I'm apparently an Imperial? Good to know. Wonderful. He clasped his hands. I run the best general store in the province. Just tell me what you need. I thought for a moment, and my eyes were drawn to a strange golden claw on the counter. Curious-looking thing. Well, some clothes would be appreciated. He lowered his head under the counter, pulling up 2 stacks of clothing. Let's see here. I got some run-of-the-mill tunics, nothing too fancy. And I also have a set of finer clothing if you're interested. I stepped forward to inspect them. They were about what one would assume considering the technological level of this place. I ran my hand through the higher-end trousers and tunic. The material would be acceptable, but holding it up to my chest, the design made me want to vomit. Is this the fashion around here for the wealthy? He just shrugged. I don't keep up with those trends. That's my sister's department, and she convinced me to buy these a few months back. They are not to my tastes. That was the politest way I could say it. I'll just take the basics for now. He nodded, reaching under the counter again. You're going to need some good boots as well. The Skyrim terrain is a bit treacherous if you're out exploring. I felt the material and just nodded. Boots were boots. There wasn't much to say about them. Let's see. I rubbed my chin thoughtfully, taking a look at the shelves around us. What about these? I picked a red-looking potion off the shelf. It's always good to carry a few health potions for an emergency. I felt my breath hitch at the nonchalant way he described the alchemic creation. Was the mystical side of the world so open here that health potions were something easily acquired by the mundane? It's not that equivalent couldn't be found in my old world, but the ingredients were hard to come by and almost extinct. Did I hit the jackpot? How many do you have in stock? Last I counted, 7 potions of minor healing. I'll take them all. I didn't even ask the price. I should be quite wealthy if some of the tags I saw around the shop were accurate. Apparently the gold coins I acquired are the default currency here. Do you have any other types of potions? Well, if you asked any town around us, they may have said no. He put an elbow on the table, giving me a prideful grin. It's a good thing you came to me. He hefted a large crate from under the counter, carefully setting them down. Nords don't really like anything beyond a simple health potion, so I've been sitting on this stock for the right buyer. Well, their loss. I muttered, picking up a small red vial. It looked like a health potion. Similar properties, perhaps? A regeneration potion. Not as quick as a health potion. So many people don't really like them. But they're better for blood loss or a bunch of smaller wounds. He stated, shifted through the various containers. Let's see here. A strength potion, that's always good in a pinch. A water-breathing potion. I doubt anyone would want to swim in these freezing waters, but another thing that's nice to have. A few stamina and magicka potions. They should still be good, though they don't last as long as health potions. Magicka potions. I quickly grabbed one of the blue containers on the counter he set to the side, inspecting the contents. This was filled with magical energy. Is this supposed to restore magical energy to someone? If so, I could make so much money selling these back home. Not everyone is like me, able to pull on the kaleidoscope to refill my reserves. These would require testing, but if nothing else, they might have some interesting concepts I could steal. There were some other miscellaneous ones, like cure poison or cure disease. But frankly, I'll take them all. The shopkeep just blinked at me. I don't want to be rude, but can you? I turned my hat upside down. A small pile of gold poured out onto the counter. I have more where that came from. He clapped his hands. Well then, what else can I do for you? You also buy here? I inquired. Let me see what you got. I'll tell you if I can take it. He didn't even bat an eye the first time I used my hat. I guess magic really isn't something uncommon around here. I started to set a few swords on the table, not much, just to empty a bit of space. He picked one up to examine it. Pretty standard, looks in good shape. I don't deal much in weapons, but I can sell this pretty easily. I'll give you 30 septims each. Not quite sure if that's good or not, but they were basically taking up space, and hey, I now know the name of his currency. Besides, I still have my cane sword, which is much better than ordinary iron. What about this? I set a large, green emerald on the table. It was the one that I had originally found inside the hat when I bought it. Divines. He whispers, picking it up. Where did you? He muttered again, inspecting the jewel. Yeah, I was guessing that even a couple 100 years ago, the people from Earth could sculpt jewels better than anyone here. Interested? Of course. He cleared his throat. I mean, yes, how much would you like for it? Let's knock off the price of the goods first. So, an even trade, the stuff for your jewel. He eyed me. Oh no, that's just the first step. We still need to talk about how many septims you are paying after that. Nice try, but I could guess this jewel was worth much more than that. You want me to tie up all my coin and goods in single jewel? He frowned, crossing his arms. What if I get robbed? The best I can do is maybe a few more items added on in a straight trade. I don't really need anything else. How about some spell books? He smiled, and just like that we both knew he had me. I was not unhappy with my exchange, but I felt like I got played a bit. Did I tilt my hand when I looked confused at the potions? Was that when he knew I was novice in his eyes? It's not like I needed the gold. I still have a hefty amount, it's just. I like having more. I was able to finagle some more goods from him, even if he fought me every step of the way. I have no doubt that the jewel would be making him a huge profit. I just didn't want to go through the effort of selling it through the proper channels. Also got some information while I was at it. He gave me a very basic map of Skyrim, along with a heads up that a card would be coming by tomorrow, and I could buy a ride to Rift 10 for a small fee. Not only that, apparently some soldiers came by last night, but the guards drove them away. I don't really understand the political structure of this place, but apparently the Jarl that oversees Riverwood is neutral or something, and he has enough clout to tell them to bugger off. So, I had some time to kill. I was sitting at a table in the inn next door. They had some decent drinks. I wasn't expecting much from the mead here, but damn was I surprised. I would definitely need to grab some before I left this world. Laid out on the table were the spell books that were mentioned. This world. They have some interesting ideas on magic, and I could thoroughly reap the benefits of such open learning. From what I was told, these were mainly just basic spells along with one adept spell. Lesser Ward, a small barrier that blocks attacks. Nothing too crazy, but its application was insane. It was elementally neutral, so anyone could use it. The effort in its casting was a bit meh, but I could experiment to make it a worthwhile spell. Oak Flesh, a strengthening spell that can overlap with my reinforcement. It leans more towards defense, but it does have a physical power application as well. Always good to have additional strengthening abilities. Instead of applying an enhancement through my body, it sort of envelopes my body in its effect. A bit mana-intensive, but it was something I would enjoy working with. Frostbite was neat. It basically channels a stream of cold air from your hand, freezing anything it touches. Well, it could be resisted easily. It wasn't like it was absolute zero temperatures. But still, an interesting spell. I would love to dissect it for further study. There was even a basic healing spell, aptly named Healing. This had been a good find. While the effects were apparently less than a basic regeneration potion, having a healing spell so easily applicable was a huge boon. The last basic spell book was Telekinesis. A bit of a surprise there. The equivalent in my old home was a guarded secret by several families. Not something unattainable, but it was such a useful spell that those who had it guarded it did so fiercely. The real gem was the adept spell book, named Distort. From what I understand about the magical system here, so far, it's a spell that falls under the illusion school. Aptly named, I suppose, since the spell is a basic physical illusion application. Basically, I can make illusions that appear real on the surface, though any interference will break them. A useful spell, and I'm quite happy with my purchase. I'll need to find more books like these and add to my repertoire. With a yawn, I picked up another bottle of mead. Well, I still had some time to kill, and this drink is pretty good at least. Chapter 8. What do you mean you're not going to Rift 10? All the rumors coming from that place, I ain't going near it for the time being. I could only just sigh his frustration. Look, if it's a matter of money, it ain't about the coin, boy. Did you not hear my words? I ain't going near it. The cart driver seemed adamant about staying away from that town for some reason. What exactly are these rumors? A dragon. He puffed out smoke from his mouth, tapping his pipe on the cart. First one to be sighted in centuries. I wouldn't believe in the tales if I hadn't met the folks fleeing with fear still in their eyes. Oh, that sounds interesting. I don't think I'm adequately equipped to deal with a dragon at the moment. Maybe if someone loosened the restrictions. How about you fight the dragon, and if you do good, I'll unlock it. Fuck off. All right. So Rift 10 was besieged by a dragon. That isn't the worst reason to stay away. Where am I supposed to go now? I mean, I didn't really need to go to Rift 10. It was merely a suggestion by those guys. If anything, I'm not really afraid of being captured or anything. I was just kind of going with the flow and was curious about the land I found myself in. How about Winterhold? The driver spoke up. Sounds cold. What exactly is worth it there? The college. You look like the learning sorts. He shrugged. A college, you say? Okay, my interest was piqued. I wonder what I could learn there. I just don't expect the townsfolk to give you a good time. They don't like the mages very much. Mages. A college for mages. A magical learning institute. Sweet Christ. You, sir, have just earned a bonus. Take me to Winterhold. I heard him chuckle, adjusting himself in his seat. Climb aboard. It'll take about a day to reach there. Oh, joy, riding in a wooden cart for a day. My butt would be sore tomorrow, but it would be worth it, I guess. Well, at least it would give me time to think. I had a lot on my mind right now. Like, how the hell did I even end up here? This isn't a parallel world of Earth. If I'm not mistaken, this is a completely alternate dimension, separated from the world line my magic should be able to access. I know for a damn fact that my calculations weren't that imprecise. I should have at least landed on a line that housed the spirit of Gaia. Something went wrong. Something I did wrong. I know that my previous self had some knowledge of the world I was born in. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the memories of the world line's progression model in my head. What did I feel when I left? Almost like I hit something. If I had to explain it, I was practically a fly being smacked by a car. No, that isn't quite right. That would imply I hit something moving in the normal sense. I basically smacked into a wall and got knocked off course. But what wall would there be? Think, idiot, think. I just smacked my head in frustration. What was I missing? Ha, idiot is right. Not helping drag. I thought you were asleep. I was too curious about your memories, so I couldn't go back to sleep. Been watching them for a few days now. Joy, does that mean you have some insight to my current issue? Let me see, what race are you? Human half-devil. What does that have to do with anything? My physical species shouldn't have a negative effect on either the casting or the effect on the actualization. If anything, my half-phantasmal nature should make it smoother, since I'm a being closer to the concept of magic. And where do devils come from? I mean their parents, but if you mean in a more philosophical sense, their demonic origins can be traced to the negative cumulations of dreams, desires, and human imagination, all catalyzed with the advent of the God of the Bible. Good and evil, yin and yang, one exists so the other must exist to balance it out as a cosmic rule. Every culture, every pantheon has their own good and evil, though the terms can be more muddled. The Asgardians and the giants of Jotunheim and Muspelheim. Olympians with their Titan counterparts, and the various giants that exist in their cultures too. Asuras and Devas of the Indian pantheons. The Yukai of the Shinto factions, with the Yamata no Orochi. The Sumerian gods and the children of Tiamat. Hell even. I paused, blinking in realization. Thought you missed the point there, but you came back around. I'm a fucking idiot, I face-palmed. I didn't take into account all the secondary realms still attached to the world. To put it into perspective, if the world was a house in the middle of the forest, it would be surrounded with trees. Trying to run into a single direction in a straight line, you would smack into a tree. The trees being secondary realms, like Olympus, Hell, Heaven, Asgard, Takamagara, etc. Whereas my previous world basically had all the trees cut down, the forest only had a few sparse trees left because the age of gods had come and gone. So, I smacked into another realm and got blown off course and somehow stepped out of the world line I was accustomed to. Okay, nothing I can't solve. I can find my way back easily enough. Well, that solves that mystery. Truthfully, it would only take a few minor modifications to my calculations if they were complete. I'll need to finish them proper at some point. Now that I think about it, I can probably find the stuff to make my mystic code here. No doubt there's going to be some interesting materials I can find. Well, this trip wouldn't be wasted. It's not like I'm under any kind of time restraints, the opposite in fact. I'm free. No responsibilities, no one controlling my life. I can go wherever the wind takes me. Speaking of wind, the scene here is breathtaking. I was bitching about the ride earlier, but once we started going, what a sight. Oi, old man, want a drink? I was laying down in the back of the cart, watching the snowflakes fall from the sky. It had gotten rather cold as we started going north. Luckily, I had some stuff packed away inside my storage space for the cold weather when I grabbed practically everything I could from that cart of confiscated goods earlier. What is that, Blackbriar? He hollered. Well, the man knows his drink. Yup, got some honey brew too if you want that. None of that pisswater stuff. A real Nord drinks Blackbriar or something a bit stronger. The old man snorted. I just laughed and handed him a bottle. It seems like no matter the world, people will defend their drink brands. What's the word around Skyrim recently? Besides dragon attacks? He took a swig. Well, I wouldn't mind hearing more about that, but I'm a bit out of the loop for everything. There were stories that Meridia's statue near Solitude has been acting up. He scoffed. Folks get in rightful panic too. Them Deidre are never up to any good. He turned back towards me. Never let some fool tell you nothing about a good Deidre, you hear me, lad? Nothing good comes from assorting with them things. Grabbing the eyes of higher powers never ends well for mortals. I didn't know what a Deidre was, but I could guess it was something godly in nature or something like that. Damn straight, you got a good head on your shoulders. He nodded. I also hear the war is heating up after Ulfric escaped some Imperial ambush or something. Heard they had him bound and ready for the block, only to escape from right under their noses. Got them Imperials up in a frenzy trying to look less foolish to the masses. What? It's only been like 3 days. How? At least there was no mention of associates or anything, geez. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if this man was spreading half these rumors. He sure travels enough to do so. He started talking about some other nonsense, but I didn't really pay much attention. I think he was rambling about some elves or something. Frankly, I think I would have fallen asleep if the lights in the distance didn't draw my attention. Looks like we're here, the old man said. As we got closer, I could see the swaying of torches. The snow made it kind of hard to make out, but the outline of buildings started to come into view. Welcome to Winterhold. It was a town, to be expected from what I saw of Riverwood yesterday, but a bit in the distance I saw it. A massive stone structure connected by a small bridge. Beautiful. The College of Winterhold. Halt, outsiders. My attention was taken by one of the guards coming towards us. State your business. I was going to check out the college. Was there any reason to hide it? The guard scowled under his helmet. Another mage, his voice practically dripping with venom. I'm sorry, I said in confusion. I've only been in Skyrim for less than a week. Did I do something wrong? The guard looked me over once before sighing. Look, the mages in the college have caused a lot of trouble for the town. Experiments gone wrong, or right, magical accidents and such aren't uncommon. Try to keep your nose clean if you join them. That sounds incredibly irresponsible. Even disregarding the morality of such things, do they not realize they rely on you all for even the basic necessities? They're in the middle of nowhere. The town is the only reason they can probably even operate without constant supplies coming and going. The logistics would be an absolute nightmare for something of that size. I think he was about to respond, but we both got distracted by a sudden shout. Ice wraiths! Shit! Get in formation! The guard looked at me again. Some assistance would be appreciated, mage. Well, I wouldn't mind helping fix the disconnect between the mages and mundane folk here. Especially if I'm going to spend any extended time at the college. I nodded, following behind. They make a quick shield wall at the town gates. I didn't know what an ice wraith was, but it looked like some kind of elemental mixed with a scaled sea creature. The old man had hurried into town good. I didn't want to have to worry about him. He was good to me. They all looked nervous. Even I felt a certain chill as a few dozen of those things approached. I quickly grabbed my sword out of my hat and drew it from its sheath. A few of the creatures in the front spewed frost blast from their mouth. It seemed like the guards were somewhat used to this, because several shields pushed together and blocked it. I'm not the most moral person in the world. I can be petty, vindictive, and I usually care about my needs over others. But I'm also not heartless. Seeing them fight like this, I just sighed and drew upon my mana. My circuits opened, and I felt my magical energy swell into both hands, and I pushed it together to store it. A moment later, 100 more guards formed up alongside us and rushed towards the incoming mass of ice wraiths. They were nothing but facsimiles, lifeless illusions that dissipated at the slightest touch. I was concerned that the snowstorm would break them before they could do anything, so I overloaded the spell a bit. I was taking several guesses here, but it seemed like the ice wraith's sensory organs deemed them real, whether it was sight or something else. Maybe they sensed the magical energy that all life forms have, their OD, so to speak, and confused the mana I implanted in each copy as that? Questions for later. I began drawing my runes in the air. If I were a betting man, these things were most likely weak to fire. I withdrew a few talismans from my hat. I didn't have many left, and I was unsure if I could craft more outside of Earth, but it felt like a good time to use them. The spell I wanted to cast required 5 specific ones, but I was missing 2 of the required elemental talismans. I would replace them with a corresponding rune. Metal enriches water. Water nurtures wood. Wood feeds fire. Fire dries earth. Earth refines metal. A pentagram formed, suspending, and connecting them all in the air. Using the creation cycle to bolster another spell to an absurd level, even my sword bolstering it by a slight degree. Fire magecraft wasn't my forte, but I had thought about a few spells I wanted to create through the usage of the runic arts. The runes swirled around my hand, invoking in the sequence I envisioned. Too many to say individually. It was simpler to link the sentence under a single spell name. Fires of Muspelheim. The land was dyed red. In front of the gates of Winterhold, if you looked out, there was no fresh snow for about 80 yards, possibly more. I think the guards were a bit surprised. Surely, they couldn't think this was much? I mean, I felt this wasn't up to par with my standards. I noticed several irregularities when I cast the spell for the first time. I did make a mental note to fix them, but I lost maybe 30 to 40% power in the final cast. Thank you. A guard pat me on the shoulder. I recognized him from earlier. You saved the lives of many good men. I guess I did. Why exactly were those things attacking? He slumped his shoulders, letting out a sigh. It's that time of the year that they reproduce. I'm not sure the exact mechanism behind how they give birth, only that they need a source of heat. They usually swarm us when the sun is at its peak, drag a few people off, then do it again the next day. This repeats for a couple weeks. Oh, heat, I see what he means. Though I am a little intrigued. Does the act of reproduction need to siphon the heat from a living being in order for them to generate offspring? Everyone around me looked immediately at ease with the large swarm gone. A large weight off their shoulders in the meantime. There were a couple sporting wounds, while a bit of ice got around the shields. I one in specific rip a thorn of ice out of his arm. What a badass, that must have hurt. Oi! I clasped him in the shoulder, casting a healing spell. He just started at me, almost in utter confusion. How can they be so surprised at my magic, magecraft, when they live next to a college of mages? Geez, my terminology is getting all mixed up. I guess they mean the same thing, contextually speaking. Thanks. The guard grunted out. No problem, though you may want to get yourself checked. I don't know much about ice wraiths, admittedly, if there are any lingering effects inside your body. I owe you a drink, mage. The guard moved his arm around. Think we all do. The other guard, possibly the leader? He walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. Thank you truly. Many of my men were ready to die today. Well, I wouldn't say no to a mug. Your Skyrim meat has grown on me. All right, you head him, boys. Batter, Tolsmar, you both are staying on duty at the gate since you were both late. Otherwise, first round is on me, boys. There was some good-natured cheering. My name is Svord, and if anyone gives you problems in Winterhold, tell them my name. He practically dragged me off towards the tavern, his posse of armed guards following along, laughing and jeering. It was not unpleasant, seeing everyone make way as we pushed open the doors of what I presumed was the tavern. The locals greeted the guards happily. I guess they would have an applied interest in the guards returning back victorious. Dagger! Svord exclaimed to a man behind the counter. Svord, it's good to see you made it. How were the... Every guard alive and accounted for. You can thank my new friend here. He laughed happily, clasping my shoulder. A mage. Dagger eyed me skeptically. You from the college, lad? I came here wanting to check it out, saw they needed a hand. I shrugged. Just did what anyone would do. I took a quick glance around. The old cart driver was chatting up a woman in the corner. She looked about his age. He saw me out of the corner of his eye. I gave him a nod and smile. Aye, he's a good one. The college would do good to add him to their number. Svord added, Now! He clapped his hands. I promised a round for everyone, and Svord doesn't go back on his word. The place erupted in cheers. It was really lively. I wasn't used to getting this kind of attention when people all gave me acknowledgement and such. But it wasn't an uncomfortable feeling. What'll you get, lad? The hero gets the first drink. Dagger. I've only had a few drinks from Skyrim so far. Black Briar, Honningbrew. What else you got for me? I sat at the counter. Svord and Dagger shared a look, a smile showing on their faces. Let's get you a true Nord drink. He poured out a bottle I didn't recognize into a large mug. All right, lad, we won't laugh if you can't handle something a bit stronger than the milk you're used to. At least not too much. Svord slapped my back. Oh, is that a challenge? I eyed him. He crossed his arms, staring at me, a grin on his face. This is a man's drink, son. I took the hat off my head, reaching inside to grab a handful of coins and slammed them on the table. The ball's on this lad, eh? Svord snorted in amusement. We were gathering a little show. He pulled out a few coins and matched me. Bottoms up. I took swig, eyeing Svord as I downed the entire thing in one drink. Granted, a bit of it spilled out onto my shirt, and I almost coughed it back up when it first went down my throat, but I slammed the empty mug on the counter. Tasted like piss mixed with honey. I coughed slightly, meeting the silence of the crowd. Fuck it, give me another. There were whoops and laughter as Svord pat my shoulder. Well done, lad. He laughed happily. You earned this. He pushed the gold towards me. All right, just keep the drinks flowing. I waved my hand around the room, pushing both piles of gold towards Dagger. More cheers and thanks were shouted my way. It was a wonderful feeling. Chapter 9. Wake up! I felt a prodding in my shoulder. I was still drowsy, and my head was killing me. Wake up! I heard and felt it again. I groggily lifted my head up to look at the person poking me. He was not a race I had seen before. An elf of some sort. The people weren't freaking out, so I was assuming that his species wasn't uncommon. The fuck do you want? He was dressed well. Too well. He had a permanent look on his face that screamed, I'm better than you. How uncouth. Not that I expected any more from a two-bit mage. He scoffed. What time was it? I don't think it was noon yet. Maybe early morning. I fell asleep at the counter. That's a bit embarrassing. It didn't look like the owner minded, though. I think I paid him enough as it was. I think we were celebrating far into the night. Even as I looked around, there appeared to be a few more people passed out here and there. I guess this wasn't an uncommon occurrence. My eyes focused back on the man who had been poking and insulting me. Who are you and why should I care? Again, that little scoff he gave made me want to punch him. I am Encano, Thalmor emissary and counsel to the archmage of the college. He proclaimed, perking up like a peacock. Neat. Yes, quite. It looked like he tried his best to not appear annoyed at my remark, failing horrendously. I have heard of your feats yesterday, and am gracious enough to offer you a place at the college. This feels all kinds of wrong. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I'm too curious to see where this goes. Oh, how kind of you, good sir. How could I ever repay such generosity? I see, you do indeed have some manners befitting someone more learned than these barbarians. I will ignore your earlier outbursts. He turned his nose up. You are lucky to have caught the eye of some very powerful mages. They are curious about the spells you evoked in your battle. Ah, there it is. I guess some descriptions of what I had done were spread around. Some idiot heard the rumors. I guess my foreign magic would be interesting to those who devote themselves to the magical studies. You said your name was Zancano? I wanted to make sure. Indeed. He nodded, clearly pleased with himself for some reason. Good. I didn't want to get your name wrong. That would just be embarrassing. I cleared my throat, drawing a bit of attention on myself. Go fuck yourself, Zancano. Trying to learn my mysteries? Do I look like I was born yesterday? If this was the clock tower, he would have been killed trying this shit on someone else. There was some snicker and laughter around the room. I saw Dagger try his best to hold back his own laugh. I just tipped my hat at the man and smirked. Why you? He exclaimed in surprise. How dare you? I think I saw his hands light up, ready to cast a spell. Only, the sound of steel being drawn from its sheath filled the room. It looked like several guards had woken up from their naps and were all pointing blades at Zancano. He paused, looking at me, then looking over the room. The magical energy he gathered had dissipated and he just scoffed. I expected nothing less from such uncivilized barbarians. Says the idiot that was about to invoke a spell in the middle of a tavern. A fire spell in a building made of wood. Do you need a lesson on what happens to wood when it catches fire? He narrowed his eyes. No wonder the Thalmor are needed in Skyrim. Truly you all need a strong, guiding hand. I didn't really get the gist of what he was saying, but the guards around me were enraged, for lack of a better term. The looks on their faces, I could only admire their control as they clenched their weapons. But I drank with them last night, sort of built a bond with them. Is it weird that I felt annoyed because they were insulted? You wanted to cast magic? Let's step outside then, you and me. I stood up, looking him in the eyes. Oh, you wish to duel me? He looked on at me with disdain. I haven't the time to waste with the riffraff. I'll give you the knowledge of my spells if you win. I cut him off. I knew what he was doing, didn't really care either. He paused looking at me, before smiling. Is this the part where you make a demand of me if you win? He waved his hand nonchalantly. Go ahead, demand whatever nonsensical thing you wish if a miracle occurs. Your clothes. The whole room was silent. Pardon. The elven mage looked at me in confusion. I want your clothes. I enunciated. You will walk back to the college, buck-ass naked when I win. This was twofold. First, I wanted to humiliate him. I already felt that there would be no common ground between us, and he was utterly insufferable. Second, I actually wanted his clothes. They looked high quality, and I thought I could take them to a tailor and maybe use their materials for something to my tastes. He snorted, holding back his anger. You will rue the day you angered me. He stomped out of the inn. I just followed after him, along with the entirety of the tavern who came to watch the show. He at least had the good sense to walk outside of town to avoid any collateral damage in the immediate vicinity. The townsfolk started lining up, more than were in the tavern. I guess news travels fast here. I think I saw Svord give me a thumbs up in the back. Well, let us discuss the rules of this duel. Zancano stated, no killing, no maiming, no large-scale collateral damage. You hurt the spectators. I'm taking your head. He seemed like the kind of person who would accidentally cast too powerful a spell near people he disliked. Fine, your terms are accepted. Shall we have someone give a countdown, or would you like to make the first move? He said arrogantly. I just raised an eyebrow. I withdrew my sword cane from my hat and unsheathed it. How uncivilized, a mage wielding a sword. He rolled his eyes, summoning a staff from somewhere. I wasn't really paying attention. I shall be magnanimous. Feel free to cast your spell. I shall not respond until you are finished. Should I just run up and stab him? Nah, I got a better idea. Oh, this is going to be good. I just smirked after hearing Drag. Leveling my sword at him, spell circles began to envelope the blade. The dimensional refraction phenomenon, an aspect of the kaleidoscope that allows me to pull an infinite amount of magical energy from parallel worlds. The circles thrummed with power, collecting and condensing the mana, ready for use. Ether cannon. My sword shuddered. I briefly panicked that it would explode at the power. I had kept the output of the spell at the bare minimum, and even so, the weapon couldn't handle this kind of spell. I saw my Encano's eyes widen as he pulled on an impressive amount of magical energy to cast a spell similar to Lesser Warding. Was it a higher tier variant of the same spell? It didn't matter. My beam of iridescent light tore through his barriers like they were paper. His cry of pain was heard, deafening the crowd. He fell to the ground, clutching his lower stomach, screaming out in pain as blood seeped from his mouth and poured through his fingers. I calmly strode over to his prone position. I saw a white light erupt from his hands, trying to heal himself. It would be slow going, but my aim was impeccable. There would be no lasting damage if he got healed, so I didn't violate the rules. I withdrew a couple potions from my storage. I practically shoved the regeneration down his throat and dumped a healing potion on the wound. This wasn't out of mercy, mind you. He still had part of his wager to uphold. "You lost," I said plainly as the bleeding began to stop. He wobbled to his feet, taking a few steps back form. "Why you dare?" I raised an eyebrow. Did he think I wouldn't notice what he was doing? I saw him channeling his own magical energy into spell, trying to hide it. I just began casting my own spells, bringing runes into existence with a hand behind my back. "Strip!" I ordered again. I saw him contort in rage, hands clenched. "I am a Thalmor emissary. You dare to lay a hand on me? Your punishment is death." He threw his hands up, and a large amount of mana was expanded. Something came into existence. A large, towering, ice figure stood between me and the arrogant elf. Another sort of elemental? No matter. I pushed my hand to the ground and brought all the runes together. Bindings of Gaia. Massive roots sprang from the frozen tundra, shooting up and wrapping around the ice creature, binding it in place. They didn't stop, shooting towards Encano, grabbing, and pulling him prone to the ground. "The duel had been concluded and you tried to kill me. I wonder what the punishment for attempted murder is." My blade pressed against his neck, and I leaned down next to him. "A two-bit mage, huh?" I whispered. The Jarl would enjoy having the Thalmor emissary in his dungeons. Svord walked up next to me, clearly hearing the exchange. "Would he now?" I raised an eyebrow, a smile shared between me and Svord. It seems like this Jarl doesn't like the Thalmor, whatever they are, and Encano looked rather pale at the thought. As I contemplated what to do, a teleportation-type spell had activated a few feet away, and a man walked out. Another elf. It looked like a different species, though. "May I request you remand him into my custody?" The man had an authoritative voice to him, yet at the same time he gave the aura of a sort of kindly old man. "Archmage," Svord greeted, maybe even with a little respect. "Svord, it's been a while." The Archmage returned. "Archmage? Someone high up in the college, perhaps. I apologize for the commotion he's caused." The mage looked at me. I can promise that he was operating under no authority of the college, and his views and words in no way reflect upon us. I looked toward Svord, who just gave me a nod. I didn't really care either way. Dump him in the river, throw him in jail, his existence meant little to me. "He's all yours. A bit of goodwill towards my future home wouldn't be too bad either." I was about to undo my spell until... Snap! The Archmage snapped his fingers, and my roots began to unravel and return to the ground. The summoned being was dispersed, and returned to whatever realm it was summoned from. I couldn't help but blink and stare at this Archmage. Frankly, he was giving me a familiar feeling, like I was staring at my previous self. That well of knowledge that seems unfathomable, and the quiet confidence that he could handle anything that came his way. Of course, the Archmage only just gave me a kind smile, though I think he was smirking a bit, but I didn't feel any amount of arrogance from it. "Well played. He's strong. Can you tell how much?" "The current you can't handle him." Using those devil terms. "At least ultimate class." Yes, the devil's way of measuring power. Lower class, middle class, high class, ultimate class, Satan class, and super class. Godly beings tend to be operating at a minimum of Satan-class power, usually in the realm of what is referred to as superclass. "I thank you, young man." He pulled Encano up from the ground and applied his own healing spells. They were strong. I could see they were many-fold stronger than the basic one I knew. He turned his gaze towards the bloodied elf. "Now, I believe you have a wager to uphold." I pause and I think everyone around us stopped too. I don't think they expected that. Why, you can't be serious, Archmage. I'm an emissary of the Thalmor, he exclaimed. Then perhaps you should act like it in the future. He narrowed his eyes. I'm your confidant. How would it look on the college if I were to parade around in the nude? Oh, it will look very poorly on us. Can you tell that already? He conceded, but power began to swell up, and his eyes glowed faintly. But it would forever taint our pride if we didn't uphold our own agreements and were known as untrustworthy. Do I make myself clear? You know, it didn't feel like a play. We're just making a scene to save face. It seemed genuine on the surface, and I usually trusted my instincts with such things. He kept spouting nonsense about being an emissary. No doubt there would be political fallout if he died, even if he was the one at fault. I could concede that point, which was why the Archmage was probably thanking me. Even Svord was willing to allow the Archmage to take him, and his own men appeared to loathe the man. I really need to learn the political situations of this land. The Thalmor emissary shuddered, sweating profusely under the Archmage's gaze. Of course. He spit out as he began undressing and tossing his clothes on the ground. He was shivering as each layer was taken off, and he began to put his hands on his underwear, but I decided to stop him. That's enough, I stated, earning their attention. I don't think anyone wants to see that. Indeed, the Archmage smiled in amusement. Make your way back to the college in Kano. We will be having words later about your assumption of power over the college's decisions. Oof, sounds like someone was going to get a spanking. And you had best be properly clothed by the time I return. No one spoke as the elf began his walk of shame. Truthfully, I expected a lot of laughter and jeering, but I think the townspeople were just too stunned to say anything. The Archmage once again turned towards me. You are an interesting young man. He flicked his wrist, and a parchment appeared in his hand. I would hate for us to be called liars, while Encano did not have the authority to do so. I would like to officially extend this invitation to join the college. I grabbed the parchment, opening it up to read. This just says, he can join with your signature. I deadpanned. Did you think it was difficult to join the college? There is only the basic requirement to be able to cast a few beginner spells, and the guard would let you in. He laughed, flexing his hand and disappearing from the spot. Only the distortion of magical energy, leaving a tell sign that he had teleported away. What just happened? I asked Svord. That would be Archmage Savos Aran, head of the college. He seemed. Frankly, I didn't know the word to use. What was the combination of powerful, quirky, funny, scary, grandfatherly? Oh. Eccentric. Aren't all mages? Svord chuckled. But he is respected. Really? I thought everyone here hated mages. Yes, that should tell you something. He pat my shoulder and walked back towards town. I picked up the clothes off the ground. Now let's see if I can find a tailor. Chapter 10. I was staring over the side of a cliff at the edge of Winterhold. I could see houses, buildings, and all kinds of infrastructure poking out of the side of the mountain, all the way down to the gorge below. Not only that, but I could also see the bridge into the college. It didn't look like it should be standing, let alone being used. What did they call it? The Great Collapse. I got the Cliff Notes version of what happened, but seeing it still like this was something else. Apparently, the relationship between the college and the town was already rather strained when it occurred, only for the people to blame the college once again when the incident did happen, though from what I could tell they didn't do it. It was tragic, but nothing I could do about it. It seems like everyone had already picked up and carried on. The town had started expanding again in the other direction. I could still see houses being built when the snowstorms weren't as bad. Does my devil biology give me some resistance against weather? I could only guess, so considering I'm lightly layered compared to the people who live here. I looked up at the sun in the sky. It was hard to get a concept of time here, especially when the sun barely peeked through the snowy air, but I could guess it was mid-afternoon, leaning toward sunset. I had just been walking around town for a few hours, getting acquainted with it. Basically, I needed to kill some time. It seems like she should be close to done. I twirled my hat and put it on my head. I guess I'll go check in with the tailor again. The guards gave me nods as I passed. I seemed to develop a sort of rampart with the town. It was nice. The place wasn't too big. Probably a few hundred people, all in all. Small enough that everyone knew everyone. and news traveled faster than the speed of light. I walked up to the tailor's shop, pushing the door open. I wasn't surprised at the scene of needles hovering in the air, moving every which way on a piece of fabric. "Yvette," I greet. Well, the older woman smiled. "It was a good idea to get to know your tailor. Anyone who takes pride in their clothing would tell you as much." I sat in a nearby chair. I didn't want to disturb her too much. To be honest, we weren't too acquainted, only having met earlier this morning when I put in my order, but we hit it off decently well. She was curious about the clothing I described, and I even used some parchment for some sketches. The most surprising thing was her application of magic. She was using telekinesis to move the needles all about as she worked through the seams. It was one of the reasons she could pump out quality work so quickly. If it were anyone else, this would have probably taken days, if not over a week, to accomplish. She told me a mage had been sweet on her in her youth, teaching her a few spells. Basic cantrips and what-not, but perfect for someone who is running a business. She could light a fire, heat water, freeze food. Things of that nature. "This should about do it." She moved her hands away, admiring her work. "What do you think?" I walked over, standing beside her. "Amazing. I can't believe how well this turned out from my horrible sketches and explanations. Truly, you are an artist." My praise was genuine. It was astonishing how well this turned out. I mean, I could tell the materials weren't the same as what I was used to back home, but it looked phenomenal. I took the clothes into the back room to change. She had already gotten my measurements before. She was quite thorough with that as well, especially around my groin area. Not that I dislike older women, if it were any other time. Unfortunately, I had wanted to get to the college as quickly as I could. I zipped up my pants, having donated the clothes from my previous world as additional material. She was quite perplexed by the little mechanism until I showed her how it worked. Suffice to say, she's really curious to where I acquired such a thing. The buttons on my shirt were nice, decorated, but classy. No uncomfortable tightness anywhere. It was just the perfect size. Of course, I made sure everything was nice and tidy as I tucked in my shirt. And lastly, I put on the vest, or waistcoat, depending on where you live. I ran my hands down the fabric, making sure there are no loose seams or snags anywhere. No, it was all perfect. The last piece, and probably the easiest for her to make, a black tie to go along with everything. I had briefly considered a white tie, but it looked best as black against my white vest along with my black shirt. There was a mirror here, though not to the standards I was used to. The glass was milky and hard to see, but I could make out my figure enough to like what I saw. Finally, adjusting my tie up and putting my hat on my head, I walked out of the room, meeting the eyes of Yvette. Oh my, if I were 10 years younger. Yeah, I looked good. The clothes make the man and all that. It was a nice confidence boost as well. My only regret, she didn't have enough material to make the jacket. I set a large stack of gold on the counter. Will this cover everything? That is way too much. She stuttered, staring at the pile. I wonder if this is too little, actually. I adjusted my tie slightly, making sure it was straight. Yes, I'm a clothes snob. I find it physically annoying to wear something so unsightly as I was before. With this much, I'll be able to order some higher quality fabrics from the next caravan. She muttered. I stopped in my tracks and turned to her, a thought crossing my mind. I set another stack of coins on the counter, earning her surprise. Then I will request your services in the future. I want a few more outfits, and I hope you can get the stuff soon. Of course, she said pridefully. I'll take care of all your tailoring needs. Well then, now that I'm properly dressed, it's time to visit the college. Walking towards the entrance, I could feel the magical energy in the air get denser. Right as the ground met the stone pathway, I put my hand out and pulsed some mana. A shimmering blue barrier was revealed in front of me. I saw my magical energy cascade in every direction, showing the form of the barrier before dissipating. Amazing! A bounded field of that size must have taken an astronomical amount of magical energy to sustain. I hesitantly stepped through. Normally I wouldn't have been so lackadaisical about going into a bounded field of unknown origins, but the college was welcoming, so I took the small risk. State your business. An elf leaning against the brick railing walked up, blocking my path. Here to join the college. I produced the letter from the Archmage. She opened the letter, staring at its contents for a moment. What? Yeah, I don't know either. I just shrugged. Oh. He snapped her fingers. You're the mage that dueled Encano. That would be me. I don't think he dueled anyone else in the meantime, so probably? Amazing. How were you able to penetrate his greater ward with a single spell, and without a large cast time? Was it some kind of master-level destruction spell? Or did it bypass the properties of the ward entirely with a curse? No, that shouldn't be it. He said his greater ward was pierced through, ignoring the absorption effects. Was it a spell that accelerated a physical object at high speeds? She started to ramble on. I could guess some things, but I felt like I was missing a bit of context. I'm sorry. I think I'm missing something here, miss. Oh, I'm sorry, I just got excited. My name is Faralda. I sometimes work as the guard for the college, screening potential recruits. I see. I said simply. And what was this about Encano? Oh, the duel has been the talk of the college since the Archmage had brought Encano back. Really? Encano doesn't strike me as the type of person who would discuss his defeat. We were surprised too, Faralda admitted. Encano isn't exactly the most likable person in the college. So, all of us were surprised when the Archmage announced that Encano was kind enough to give a lecture on magical dueling using his experience as an example. Oh, okay, that makes more sense. I could only imagine Encano's face with the Archmage standing there, making him give a very detailed explanation on how he was defeated. I mean, it wasn't just because I took him down in one shot. There were several variables that led to me defeating him with such ease. His arrogance was probably the highest factor. He sat there and let me cast a spell at him. He acknowledged that he didn't know about my magic and still let me set the pace. Gods, I could imagine the whole lecture, Encano having to thoroughly describe the entire thing in detail, then the Archmage going, "Okay, class, what did Encano do wrong here?" And the arrogant elf having to stand there and let a bunch of mages below his skill level criticize him. Even the Archmage said he didn't know what spell you used. Faralda looked at me expectantly. "It's a secret." I gave a smile. "Worth a shot." She mumbled, "All right, go ahead. I'll look you up once you get settled. I wouldn't mind exchanging pointers." As I approached closer to the college, and noticed the temperature getting noticeably warmer, there wasn't even any snow on the walkway the further I went. An effect of the bounded field around the college. That was my first assumption, and considering the sheer amount of magical energy being pumped around here, it wasn't probably far off. I noticed several wells along the walkway. They looked like small openings to the nearby ley lines. They pushed out so much magical energy that it was visible to the naked eye. Incredible. I knew this whole trip was going to be worth it. Hell, falling into this world was worth it just for this. The things I could learn here, I was excited just imagining it. The path led to a sort of rotunda that circled around, leading to several towers, all before the large doors of the main building. There were mages all around. Some were casting spells, some were just chatting happily, or reading a book on a bench. I got barely spared a glance. Everyone was deep in their own studies or experiments. It reminded me heavily of the clock tower, if a bit more whimsical in nature. Pushing the doors open, I was greeted with the faces of about a dozen mages, gathering in a circle with an older man in the middle. "Greetings," the older man stepped out of the group, walking over with a smile on his face. "You appear to be a new face," he said, giving me a once-over. "Indeed, I just joined today. Or I will hope to be joining. I'm not entirely sure on the process." "No problem. You've basically joined once you pass the threshold. We just need to get you squared away with lodging and a schedule of when classes are." He nodded. "For now, though, what about joining our lesson? It's for beginners, but a refresher is always a good idea." "That would be lovely, thank you." Did he know I wasn't a beginner? Well, I guess the term is subjective here. I wasn't familiar with their magic in depth yet. "All right, everyone. It seems like we got one more student, Mr." He looked at me. "Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg. I look forward to learning alongside all of you." I introduced myself. "Wonderful." The older mage smiled. "We were just going over the lesser warding spell and how to apply it in a practical situation." I stood to the back. It seemed like everyone here were a bit younger than me, probably by about 3 to 4 years. Most people think of lesser ward as a wall. He pushed out the spell in front of him with an ease that was impressive. He no doubt had much experience under his belt, which it may seem like on the outside, but such thinking is incorrect. Yes, it is a protection, It stops spells from reaching you, but understanding how it works is just as important as knowing how to cast it. Our spells are directly tied to our imagination and willpower. If we force the spell into such narrow understanding, its abilities are greatly weakened. The wall becomes brittle and easily demolished. Was Lesser Ward the basics here? There was a greater version of the spell were they the bread and butter of defensive spellcasting? He looked around the room. I guess he wanted to see if anyone understood. Maybe this was a bit too advanced to talk about the concepts behind spellcasting. Well, it was extremely simplified, but still, he was talking about how to modify the spell, albeit indirectly. Wilhelm, was it? Can I hear your thoughts? The mage called me, as all the heads towards back to face me. About understanding spells in general, or my thoughts towards Lesser Ward? Just Lesser Ward, for now. He smiled. I suppose it's a very efficient spell if you copy it straight from the book. Its cost and effort to cast are below average, and it's a very sturdy shield for what you get. It won't block anything high tier, but fights don't always involve casting large-scale destruction. A quick fireball is oftentimes much more dangerous than summoning a lightning storm, yet can be blocked quite easily with a quick Lesser Ward. All correct. He turned toward the others. As he said, simple and efficient spells are often better than big and destructive. That being said, it is unlikely you'll run into anyone able to cast such spells, meaning a Lesser Ward will probably be able to counter almost anything an enemy mage can throw at you. He turned towards me again. If I can ask for your assistance again, would you mind casting a Lesser Ward while I shoot a ball of light at it? Of course. I nod, stepping out of the group, getting a little distance from him. This was supposed to be a learning thing, so I very blatantly held my hand up and pushed the spell outward, giving everyone else in the hall a good look. I can already see you understand the spell quite thoroughly. He held a ball of light in his hand and basically tossed it at my ward. It splashed across before dissipating against my magical barrier. Now you see how it's held? I used the same strength against all of yours earlier, yet none of yours could take it without breaking. And I know what you all want to say, that he is more experienced or more powerful since he's older, but is that true? He looked towards me. Wilhelm, how much magicka did you push into your Lesser Ward when you cast it? Magicka, if I recall, that was the term they used for mana here. The bare minimum for the spell to cast. So what was the difference between your ward and the ward he cast? He asked the class, but no one answered. The answer is simple, really. It isn't even experience, it's just knowledge. He understood how the spell worked and was able to apply its properties correctly when casting. He gestured over to me. Tell me, Wilhelm, what do you picture when you cast a spell? A bag, I said after a moment. I wasn't really at the level where I had to force an image when casting. I was pretty far ahead of that, but it was a step any novice would go through. But the spell reminded me more of a bag than a wall. Wonderful, he exclaimed. A bag, not a wall. If you read the spell tome properly, you would have seen that the Lesser Ward absorbs the magicka of the spell that it blocks, rendering it moot. A wall cannot absorb. It prevents. It is static and unyielding. Whereas a bag can take into itself. Yes, it can rip when too much is put in, but that is the limit of a spell itself. He looked around the room, noticing the faces of his student light up in understanding, smiling in good nature. All right, let's leave it here for today. I want you all to practice casting your Lesser Ward every morning until you can do it without effort. The students dispersed, chatting and whispering to each other as they scattered to the ends of the college. Thank you for your assistance. The mage walked towards me. I find it helpful when the students have someone closer to their age to compare themselves to. I was happy to help. I smiled. It was a nice experience again, being in a classroom. Hell, I even learned a thing or two while I was here. The room registration is kept by Urag Groshab, our resident librarian. Just introduce yourself to him, and he'll set you straight. The old mage pat me on the shoulder. Oh, where are my manners? I completely forgot to introduce myself. I am Talfdir, the master alteration mage for the college, along with the teacher for defensive magics. He walked me over towards the door. Here we are. These stairs lead up to the Arcaneum. Be polite to Urag Groshab. He takes his job as librarian very seriously. I just stared at the stairs going up. A library in a magical college. It was just there, open for anyone to enter without prior authorization. Was it really this simple? Could I access the school's library without anyone stopping me? I was practically dancing with excitement. Forget a room, I want to just live in the library.